Welcome to Sharing Hope. My name is Jamie George. I'm your host, and our guest tonight is the illustrious Barry Zito. Now, you may have heard of Barry because he was a superstar pitcher in the major leagues, drafted by the Oakland Athletics, spent 7 seasons initially with the A's. He had a career year in 2002. He won the Cy Young Award that year, signed with the Giants, won a couple of World Series championships there. Lots of interesting information around that story that comes out that you can find out about in his book that came out this year called Curveball. And then he finished out back with the A's again. And there's some really, really, really interesting stories wrapped around his career. And then what you may or may not know is that Barry grew up in a musical family. And so as soon as he was done with baseball, he went into music. His debut EP, No Secrets, appeared January 2017, hit number 39 on the Billboard's country album sales charts. He's been out touring with a bunch of country artists, doing Christmas shows. He's been all over the country, and the guy's just a talented human being. What a special thing to have him with us today. Welcome, Barry.
Jamie, great to see you, man, as always.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah.
So first, how are you coping with the quarantine?
Man, I find that I need to radically accept sometimes. I mean, well, first of all, it's pretty crazy what is going on, right? And I think we're all just in our bubbles right now, just coping how we do. And it hasn't come super close to me, actually. I'm fortunate. Like, we had somebody that was helping us out around the house that got tested and had all the symptoms. And so we were like, oh, goodness. She tested negative. So it hasn't hit super home like I know it has with so many. But I just I feel like there's something going on behind all this where we're all forced to just be in our house with our family. We can't distract, or if we're distracting, we got to get very we have to be a little more, have a little more ingenuity when it comes to our distractions. Hey, if I can distract, we have a newborn. So I'm holding the baby usually all night, giving my wife some sleep and staying in the house. But, radical acceptance is powerful, man. When I'm like, no, you can't do music. You can't work. You just got to sit and just be in this, man. And when I lose that resistance, I can just enjoy the day and have a great time with my kids.
Wow. And that's radical acceptance. I love that. Is there anything you discovered that mattered more, like before this whole thing went down, like this really mattered and it just kind of doesn't matter that much, or anything that matters more now than ever before?
Yeah. I mean, I think I realize that my family, I think that I probably took the family for granted. I mean, we have 3 boys, a newborn, a 2, and a 5. And, but I think after being just in this with them, obviously there's so many stories of people losing family members and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just realizing, and it's kind of cliche, but like nothing's guaranteed. And, I actually got sick. I had a fever for a couple of days randomly last week. I was staying 6 feet away from all my family members. I'm like, do I have this?
Yeah.
Am I going to be the next to go? I think these are just normal things. And so it was a nice kick in the butt for me to just, hey man, nothing's guaranteed here. So, soak up the kids, soak up these times. They're going quick.
Gosh. Yeah, I feel the same way. The thing was, it does feel cliche. Like it's all the stories we always hear. Like at the end of your life, nobody's counting through their money or their properties. You're just thinking about the people that you love, right?
Yeah.
And it does feel a little bit like we all have a chance to kind of look around at those closest to us and go, boy, you do matter. Now, for some people, I do a little bit of coaching. So sometimes the conflict resolution scale has had to increase a little bit because the frequency of interaction.
Yes.
My 13-year-old said the other day, she said something rather impolite, as 13-year-olds do. And we said, now how come you don't talk like that, to people? She goes, well, because I just love you guys more. I said, what? Well, I love you. I'm comfortable. You're my family. Why do I have to pretend?
Dude, there's some truth to that, though, right? People to us get the worst versions of it.
I'm like, this is my 13-year-old. She's very honest. And she's like, no, I'll be more polite out there. But, I'm not filtering. I'm telling you exactly how I feel. I'm like, okay, man, I think I feel loved in that, maybe.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It's
Well,
being in close proximity with the loved ones you got to navigate it, man.
yeah.
And we're in it right now. I mean, we're not getting much sleep, my wife and I, and she's breastfeeding around the clock. And, yeah, it takes some skill, man, to keep peace right now. But to not be like a peacemaker, right? In that dysfunctional way, like to still say what I have to say, not be like, you're right. Sorry, honey. Like, hold on. Cause then I'm going to get, resentful. Right.
Yeah.
And lead to more stuff. Yeah. It's, I think we're all working on our people skills right now with our family members.
Is there something in particular when you guys are just agitated or frustrated and everybody's just been around each other too much? Have you found a good tool or mechanism or something you guys say either with you and Amber or with the kids that is there kind of a go-to for you to help keep it healthy?
I think for me and my dynamic with my wife, I mean, we all have our own dynamics with our spouses, but for me, I feel like if she blows up and she's mad or I did something wrong, like I feel like I expect the vibe to be heavy for the next 2 hours. For her, she just gets it out and moving right along.
Yeah.
And so for me to just be like, oh yeah, like 2 minutes later, it can be fine. And to not drag that thing in now and have it continue to ruin all these new moments. That's huge. So for me, letting go of the conflict and be like, we're good. And then I'll check in with her and be like, hey babe, like, you still mad about? No, babe, like it's fine. Like, yeah, I just had to say that and we're good. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of our little key is.
Yeah. What about with the kids? How do you navigate, if the kids are kind of on each other or anything, do you have a tool or a communication thing you do with the kids to just help navigate when the tensions run high?
It's tough, man. Yeah. With the kids. I mean, the 5-year-old is just testing every boundary. Really. And I think for me, we try to really be present and talk through things probably to a fault. I know we've had friends that are just like, I'm over it, put on a TV show, I'm checking out. And, we do that too sometimes. But for me, it's always trying to see things from their perspective. And I think that is what helps me. Like, this kid's 5, like he's trying to do this and this, and he means so well. And so when he tries to the 2-year-old the other day, we had the baby, we were kind of rocking him, and the 2-year-old goes to plug the white noise into the wall. And I go, don't do that. You're not supposed to plug anything into the outlet. Stop, go to timeout, right? The whole thing. But I think it's a great example of he was just trying to help the baby.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Noise. And so I think, and I think that's what our kids do. A lot of times they have the right intentions. They just get it wrong. I mean, like all of us, right?
Yes.
So to have that grace and just be like, dude, I get it. And but listen, there's a better way. But yeah, dude, it's hard, man,
But that communication, like that does feel really healthy. It's inconvenient to have those conversations.
And it's way more energy consuming, right?
Yes. But doesn't it feel like it pays off in the long run? I mean, because at least they feel seen and you're having a moment with your kid instead of just hey, that's dumb, stop doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right. I mean, even as adults, you kind of go, hey, man, my intentions were really good here. It kind of feels good when someone goes, yeah, you know what? I could see that. Behavior didn't work out, but I can see that what you were trying to do was the right thing. I mean, we long for that. Wouldn't a kid?
Oh, I know we do. Right. Yeah. I mean, we have the saying, right? Well, I'm only human or whatever, but sometimes we don't allow much space for others. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to continue to humble myself in front of my kids. And I learned that from you, you kind of made a point one day when you were talking, saying, I told my 12-year-old that I screwed up and I'm sorry. And, even with my kids being so young, with my 5-year-old, especially, but, I screwed up. I make mistakes and we just got to own them. We got to learn from them. But I continue to try to do that to my kids because being holier than thou kind of thing. I mean, it's just not,
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And kids are actually incredibly forgiving.
I know. And it's magical. Like I can get so mad, and whatever, and maybe just fly off the handle. And after the consequence and we talk it out and it's just back to, hey dad, why don't you come over here and check this out? I'm like, amazing. Look at that. Total reset.
Yeah. It's total reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a lot of my conversations have been, especially with clients working on the side, talking about the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Uncertainty is the dominant word that comes up with everybody. We've talked a lot about your story. Of course, I've read Curveball. That was so powerful just to see certain elements of your story. We talked after that. Is there a time in your story where you felt this kind of an uncertainty or something like it, just where your whole world felt completely uncertain, like so many of us do today? We don't know if this is going to last, a week or a month. People are talking about it coming back in the fall. I mean, there's so much we don't know.
Yeah.
Can you go back to a place in your story where you felt a similar kind of uncertainty? What was challenging about it? How did you get through it? And how were you different because of it?
Yeah, that's good. So the arc of my career was kind of like came up, got shot out of a rocket, like amazing, kind of great stats, and won a Cy Young my second season and like second full season. And then, just kind of all the expectations were instantly there. Right. So, and then pitched for about 3 or 4 more years after the Cy Young, and then became a free agent, which is in sports. That's your opportunity to kind of like get your big contract, kind of like get set up, right? That's kind of your small window that nobody almost gets. So at that point, I was one of the top guys in the league and knew I was going to sign this huge deal. I didn't have a huge sense of identity outside of what I did at that point in my life. And so I was raised by 2 amazing parents, and they were in the new age spiritual world. And I think as long as life was going pretty good, it was awesome for me to take full credit for, my successes. And that's kind of the way I was raised, is I can create success through my mind. And if I just focus on this and manifest this and attract this and all these things, right? And I think there's some truth to those things, certainly, but there are things that hit us that I don't think we were prepared for, or certainly didn't manifest. And so when those things started to hit me is after I signed this huge contract. And so, what I did after my 7 seasons with the Oakland A's was sign this huge contract with the San Francisco Giants. And so it was a 7-year deal. So it was about to pitch another 7 years. And it was this huge lump sum of money. It was the biggest contract ever at that point for a pitcher. And again, since I didn't have an identity, it was all, this is feeding the monster, right? And I called it, in my book, I called it felt like there was like a fame monster in me. And I lived in Hollywood at the time. And I grew up in San Diego, but I kind of I moved to LA and went to college and stayed there. And so I ended up having this identity so wrapped in who knows me, who am I hanging out with, who thinks I'm important, can I get the best looking girl in the room, all these things, right? Can I drive the fastest, coolest car? Can I have the biggest house? And so these were the things that were feeding me. And of course, we all know there's no end to that. You're never like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm full. I'm fine. No, I'm going to pass on that dessert.
Right.
And so what ended up happening is sign the contract, right? And it was like more. Went out and bought all these crazy sports cars. Well, the last thing that was kind of on my mind was, oh, you got to go pitch, you got to pitch for 7 years and keep doing what you did to get this. And the whole contract turned into a maintenance thing. I need to pitch well to maintain the attention versus I need to pitch well because I love pitching. I love throwing a baseball and I love how it feels to strike a guy out. And that's enough. And I don't care who cares about it. And I don't care who wants to pay for that or who is looking. And so the whole motivation changed over those years. And so it became, I'm pitching literally to uphold my identity, my self-worth, which is way too much pressure on a baseball or doing anything really. So the collapse was inevitable. And after that first season, which was kind of like a average season, average major league stats, but you can't do that when you're getting paid the most.
Right.
And I think that's when the uncertainty really came in. The beginning of that second season was like, oh, wow. Okay. Everybody's mad. Everyone's like, why did we sign this dude? This is a bust. And then I just continued all the same patterns for years, went out to prove everyone wrong. No, don't worry. I'm worth it. I'm going to do this. Started out that second year, 0-8. had an ERA over 7, which if there's baseball fans out there, when you have an ERA over like 4, you're starting to get into that iffy territory. Once you get to a 5, you might get sent to AAA. Mine was over 7. And I was getting paid by far the most on the team. And so again, fast forward a couple years later, same story. Well, finally we get to the playoffs in 2010. It was the first time we'd made it to the playoffs since I'd been there. And I get left off the roster, and they tell me that, hey, we got 4 other starters that are pitching, better. So we're going to take these 4 guys to the playoffs, as teams do. And, we're going to leave you off the roster. And why don't you go back to LA and we'll see you next spring. And I was like, go back to LA, go back home. This is my team. And so I literally persuaded the manager to leave me on the team so I could just work out and be unseen, unheard guy in the dugout. Again, albeit making 5, 6, 8 times as much as any other guy in the team.
Wow.
And so at that point, the uncertainty was so loud and I was freaking out, tried a million things. And then I think it's after that, after watching my team win the World Series and all in truth, I was rooting against them. I was hoping they would lose to validate me. They can't do it without me. That's how screwed up I was.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful, but it's such an honest expose on our selfishness when we're collapsing internally. And it's a powerful part of your story that you own that, told your team that you walked through the messiness of it. And then what happened after that? I mean, because that really, in between, after the World Series, that's a pretty powerful moment. They win. You wish they don't. You haven't contributed.
That's right. So what happens after that is I'm basically my identity on the field is completely obliterated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They just did everything I wanted to do my whole life, but they did it without me.
Yes.
And so I went back to Los Angeles and to be honest, I mean, I went into this 12-step program, Codependency. I was obsessed with others' opinions, and codependency is kind of about changing other people so that you change their perspective of you.
Wow.
Are you okay? Yeah. And like you say, if you're not okay, I'm not okay. Well, the fans weren't okay. So I had to change their minds. And the only way I could do that was by pitching well. And so
which couldn't happen, which wasn't happening.
It wasn't. And I was so desperate to pitch well to literally just change their minds about me. And, but again, it was all about me. And I think that's kind of the bottom line. It was all about me and my stuff. And so what Coda taught me was there's a power greater than me that can restore me my sanity. And, I was like, yes, need that. Have never acknowledged that. Never thought it wasn't about me. It was about something else I could turn to. And so really, it became a God thing. It did.
12-step program in many ways led you to God.
12-step program led me to God. Cause first it allowed me to admit that my life was unmanageable. Step
yes.
one.
Right.
And I'm powerless over other people's opinions. And, the AA is powerless over alcohol, but Coda is powerless over others' opinions. And so step 2 was acknowledge there's a power out there. And so 6-8 months later, the girl I was dating at the time, who's now my wife, said, lock up all your self-help books, because I had everyone, and, read this book. And she handed me a Bible, and she was terrified to do that. And so, but I was like, please, something, tell me how to live. I'm such a mess. I'm sabotaging myself left and right. But the coolest part is I got to read the Bible and hear the kind of the gospel with fresh ears. I had no baggage, never was in church as a kid, had no idea about anyone telling me hellfire, brimstone,
right.
Didn't know what any of it was. It was literally just this is so beautiful. I want this.
Wow.
And that's what led me out of the one. It's all about me, right? It's all about him. And 2, kind of the uncertainty. It's I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know a God who does, and I trust him.
Wow, Barry, man, that right there. Because in these moments, we go to this quarantine thing. I think we have altruistic moments. I think most people do. I'd like to think that they're like, I really feel some sympathy I'm hearing about somebody who got sick somewhere in another state or whatever else. Or maybe it kind of starts to get close to home. A friend of a friend got sick. And then for some people, no, it's their family. It's hit them. They're dealing with it firsthand. But don't most of us kind of start by thinking about ourselves and going, hey, this has affected my paycheck this way. This has affected my financial future this way. And and you're giving us this picture of what it was like in baseball, but I think when this kind of crisis hits, sometimes it feels like I know I have spent at different times in this crisis, spent a disproportionate amount of time just thinking about me.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And not placing, how you just said it, not placing my trust, because at one level it's always uncertain, right?
Yeah. It's an illusion to think it's not, right?
Right. So, I mean, I'm grateful for these systems we put in place, and I got a lot more trust than I thought in American capitalism. I have some new questions about it now. But
Yeah.
right, it exposes where I've placed my trust.
Mm,
And you're right. I just love the way you said it. Like, can I trust in someone who's totally in control? What were some of the things that shifted in you internally when you started to do that?
For me, it was a big reset. I got to focus on the parts about life and the parts about baseball that I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
I remembered that, oh yeah, I actually love how it feels to like throw this ball and feel the seams come off my fingers and hear that little, right? When I throw the curveball and it comes off right, or when I throw the fastball and I just know the second after I throw it, or the split second after I throw it, before it gets to the plate, I know that it's what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And that, so, and I'm like, oh, I get to go throw baseball today versus I have to win because my approval and my identity is on the line. It's like completely different. And so what I got to do was enjoy the game for what it was for the most part from that point on for the next few years. And it led to me releasing the results of what I thought they had to be and say, like, God, whatever you need, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. I'm not going to lose out on this moment because I'm so obsessed with the next moment. And I constantly was losing out on this moment because I was like, well, what's the next moment going to be? And that was years of my life went by like that. And so got to be a part of a 2012 World Series and pitched really well. And again, because I was not so obsessed with what I need, what I want. But I think there's like this magic, and it was kind of like the radical acceptance I was talking about. It's like, if I want to like be in the studio all day, like that's great. But as long as I'm feeling that like tension where I'm rocking the baby and playing with the kids all day, but like I want to be in the studio, I'm going to be missing those days.
You're missing the moment again. Yes.
You know what I mean? And there'll be 25 and I'll look back to now and be like, dude, remember the quarantine when you like literally weren't even present with the family? Well, wouldn't you like to hold that baby now?
Man, I've thought about that. I've thought, we all know we're going to tell this story, right? It's like 9/11. You remember where you were. My parents always talk about, they knew where they were when Kennedy was shot. They remember that moment, that kind of thing. Or when we landed on the moon. Right? So we know we're going to be telling the story of the quarantine. Yes. And I have at different times gone, am I happy with the story that I'm going to be telling? How am I spending my time?
That's good.
Will I remember? I have thought about that.
It's really good. I love that.
Yeah, which maybe I hope it's healthy. Sometimes maybe it's not healthy because the very thing you're talking about, I'm fast forwarding. I'm trying to create a story already. Maybe I don't know.
Isn't that funny?
Well, yeah, and so
I feel like there's something powerful in fast forwarding our lives, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and then looking back to today and be like, how would I have spent that day if I?
Yeah, you're right. That is a healthy exercise. If I don't obsess over it, you're right. I think if it is what it is as an exercise of perspective.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah, that feels healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I know enough about myself that I'm often creating stories in my mind. So I have to try and check myself for the very thing you're talking about, that I don't leave the moment to just go create meaning out of something.
Yes, I know what you mean. That brain yours is pretty amazing.
Oh gosh. So incredible career with baseball. It's a fascinating story to get. If you're a baseball person, I'll go read this book, Curveball. I've known Barry for a couple of years, and there was stuff in the book I'm like, oh wow, it kind of blew my mind. It's so inspiring. Your story is so inspiring, Barry. Just thanks for your vulnerability. That's just the way you are. Now we got to talk about music, because music, interestingly enough, has really always been a part of your life. People now who interact with you and know you as a singer-songwriter and that sort of thing, but it's actually been there since childhood, right?
It has, yeah. My father he grew up in the Bronx. He ended up being a piano player, and then ended up being the musical director for Nat Cole and his conductor, Nat King Cole.
Yeah, which is incredible. I mean, that's amazing.
It's insane. Like
yeah.
He was just another piano player in New York, right? And then
wow.
Nat King Cole asked him to be his road conductor, and then he met my mother while he was doing that. She was 15 years younger, which is kind of crazy. He was 33. She was 18. And she had dropped out of UCLA to go sing with Nat. She got this job as a singer.
Wow.
And it's what she always wanted to do. And so, so we grew up, they ended up moving out west, but, we grew up in the house with, jazz and all the jazz standards and all the Frank Sinatra and Nat Cole. And so that was my love. And I started playing guitar. My father told me, don't go into music. You can't make a living. Don't do that. He said, with baseball master, fastball, curveball, changeup, they'll come find you anywhere you are in the world. They will send people. It's so true, right? The baseball scouts. So I finally, I did buy a guitar at 21. He was like fine with that. And so I had played guitar through my whole career and always wanted to go in music full time. And so, I was able to settle here in Nashville and start writing songs, and started doing the country thing, did a little EP with that kind of sound, just stripped down, and then getting into production now, which is really where I've always wanted to be. So it's a long road, the production road. And, but I'm just trying to remind myself, man, have fun. It's not about the result, it's about the process, just like on the mound.
Yeah.
And, and so, working on a project to come out, hopefully in about 5 or 6 months with a whole new sound that's kind of, that I'm
cool.
in charge of. So it's exciting, man.
Again, this is another way you inspire me. I mean, because clearly you have your like 20,000 hours in baseball. I mean, part of that story in Curveball talking about how many times you threw that ball growing up, right, with your dad in the backyard and the whole thing. And then to finish baseball and essentially start from the ground up. I mean, again, you could play the guitar, but learning production, engineering, all this stuff, and immersing yourself in learning a whole new trade. And I mean, I'm telling you, your passion for it and your dedication, it's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you, man. I think we all need something to dig into, right? And it's like, as long as we're uncomfortable, we're going to be growing, we're going to be learning. And so I think I'm always just trying to run from comfort as much as I can. And if I'm comfortable for too long, like I know something's about to go drastically wrong. My habits, my vices are probably going to start spiraling out of control at that point.
Yeah.
As long as I'm stimulated by the fear of discomfort, kind of, what's going to happen, I think that's life-giving for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So stay in motion, stay engaged.
Yeah.
Which is a good word for us in this season too, for a lot of us who are quarantined to go, and just like go Netflix every night and maybe go do a thing, like go create a thing, go start a thing, go learn a thing.
Totally. Engage is such a good word.
Engage.
Yeah. And I guess the opposite of that would just be numbing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to a friend of mine and he said, he said the liquor stores have apparently, he said he talked to somebody who owned a liquor store and he said, how's business? He said, you make twice as much? He's like, no, it's like 5 times as much. And I was like, wow. Oh, wow. Because people just, there's more time, or they're numbing out, or what, just there's more time to
dealing with it.
Do whatever. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. It always is inspiring. If folks wanted to kind of check in on what you're doing now with your music and that sort of thing, where would they go?
So Barry Zito Music is the website, barryzito.com, and all the socials, Barry Zito Music. And then, just under my name on like Spotify and iTunes and all that, Barry Zito. Yeah. So,
I'd ask you about your touring, but nobody's touring anywhere.
No, I know. I know people are doing these cool things from home. So which is cool. No tours right now, just in the studio, but that's kind of where I've always wanted to be. So
yeah, cool.
Man.
Well, Barry, thanks for taking the time. Please hug your wife for me. Say hi to the family, the kids, and stay healthy.
I will, James. I appreciate you, man. And glad you guys are doing all right too.
Thank you. Good to see you, brother.
All right. You too, man.
Hopefully this thing lifts soon so we can go hang.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Thank you guys, everyone.
See you, bro.
All right. Bye.